Renaissance, rebirth, rebuilding, utilize the youth may find truth that lies.
Praise Jesus. We're reading Matthew chapter 14. At that time, Herod, tetrarch, heard of the fame of Jesus, and said unto his servants, This is John the Baptist. He is risen from the dead, and therefore mighty works do show forth themselves in him. For Herod had laid hold on John, and bound him, and put him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife. For John said unto him, It is not lawful for thee to have her. And when he would have put him to death, he feared the multitude, because they counted him as a prophet. But when Herod's birthday was kept, the daughter of Herodias danced before them and pleased Herod, whereupon he promised with an oath to give her whatsoever she would ask. And she, being before instructed of her mother, said, Give me here John Baptist's head in a charger. And the king was sorry. Nevertheless, for the oath's sake, and them which sat with him at meat, he commanded it to be given her. And he sent and beheaded John in the prison, and his head was brought in a charger, and given to the damsel, and she brought it to her mother. And his disciples came and took up the body, and buried it, and went and told Jesus. And when Jesus heard of it, he departed thence by ship into a desert place apart. And when the people had heard thereof, they followed him on foot out of the city. And Jesus went forth and saw a great multitude, and was moved with compassion towards them, and he healed their sick. And when it was evening, his disciples came to him, saying, This is a desert place, and the time is now past. Send the multitude away, that they may go into villages, and buy themselves victuals. And Jesus said unto them, They need not depart, give that ye them to eat. And they say unto him, We have here but 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He said, Bring them hither to me. And he commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass, and took the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes. And looking up to heaven, he blessed and brake, and gave the loaves to his disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. And they did all eat, and were filled. And they took up of the fragments that remained 12 baskets full. And they that had eaten were about 5,000 men, beside women and children. And straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship, and to go before him unto the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with the waves from the wind, for the wind was contrary. And in the 4th watch of the night, Jesus went unto them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit. And they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. And he said, Come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him, and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? And when they were come into the ship, the wind ceased. Then they were in the ship, came and worshipped him, saying, Of a truth, thou art the Son of God. And when they were gone over, they came into the land of Gennesaret. Gennesaret. And when the men of that place had knowledge of him, they sent out into all the country round about, and brought unto him all that were diseased, and besought him that they might only touch the hem of his garment. And as many as touched were made perfectly whole. This is the word of the Lord. A lot of people are getting healed in this day and age, that day and age, thinking of that they hear, oh, this Jesus is healing people. Let's gather up all our sick, and then our whole town is healthy again. Isn't that amazing? We'll go through a couple verses. This chapter 14 starts off telling the story of John the Baptist. If you are unaware, what happens to John the Baptist is, as it said, he was captured by Herod, and it said Herod, fearing the multitude, did not put him to death. So Herod is king of some sort, a ruler, and fearing the multitude is fearing his subjects would revolt over this injustice. As they said, that the people thought John was a prophet. So if he were to put John to death, they would be upset. He chose not to do it until it was, I think, his birthday party or a birthday party. The Herodias, I don't know if that's a name or Herod's daughter, pleased him. He made an oath that I'll give you whatever you want. And it said, the daughter, as she was trained by her mother, requests the head of John the Baptist. So Herod had John in prison. The daughter says, I want the head of John the Baptist on a platter. The king says, I must uphold my oath because a man has two things in this world, his word and his deeds. So Herod had to keep his word good. And it said he was sorry. But in both cases, what can he do? I think is how he felt of sorry. He must uphold his oath, and he must then deal with the consequences of his actions, words, and deeds. So he brings John. John is no more. One greater than him comes after. So, and then John's followers are going to bury his body, and they tell Jesus. And that is why Jesus maybe not runs away, but he goes away. I forget what it said, departs. But because the prophecy is not yet fulfilled, Jesus cannot be captured and killed. At this time, he must move on. Then there is the story of the 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes that are able to feed 5,000 plus multitude. So they're about to enter the desert, and Jesus' disciples say, this is a bad place. There's women, children, 5,000 people. Let's get them out of here. Tell them to go home. They'll listen to you, Jesus. And Jesus says, how much food do we have? 5 loaves, 2 fishes. Let's sit down, break bread. I'll pray. And so they do. They start breaking the bread, passing it around. Everybody's eating. It says that everybody ate and everybody was full. After they are all full, they gather the leftovers, the remnants. They begin putting into baskets, and there are 12 baskets of leftovers from these 5 loaves and 2 fishes. The metaphor being that Jesus's gifts are boundless, bountiful, and we will see that with the third story of Peter on water. So we'll quickly touch on the Peter story, or we'll cover the Peter story, and then I'll talk about what I'm saying in Jesus being boundless or bountiful and boundless. So they have the feast, then the multitude does get sent away. The disciples board a boat and are at sea. Jesus goes up on a mountaintop to pray by himself. When he's done, he goes back to the sea. He's Jesus. He doesn't need a boat. So he's walking out on the water, And Peter sees him and says, if you're really Jesus, then invite me out to on the water with you. Jesus says, come. And Peter steps out, but then he becomes afraid and begins to sink. And that's the connection I want to make with. So, and Jesus says, verse 31, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? So little faith and doubt, because Peter saw the waves or whatever, he got fear. The fear entered his mind thinking, I could drown. These waves could hurt me. But that is little faith, because he is walking towards Jesus, eye on the prize, Jesus. And if he had kept his eye on the prize, if he had kept his faith, there would have been no problems. He would have walked across easy. And that, going back now to the feast story, that the metaphor is one of faith, that no one had doubt in the middle of the meal saying, excuse me, these 5 loaves cannot be passed beyond us 5 people, something like that. And then perhaps it would have failed. I mean, of course, Jesus could still do it, but that their faith would have made them fail, just as it did with Peter. At that time of the food, I don't think anyone knew what was going on. So it was just, while we're starving, we're in a desert. It's 30 AD. Okay. So Jesus saves Peter. And when they were gone over, they came to Gennesaret, and they brought the people to heal. And that'll be all for this week. Go with God.